This is it. The doors to my signature podcasting program, the Podcast Lab, are closing soon. If you've been thinking about launching your very own podcast, this is your final chance to join me inside. Head to teachmetopodcast.com. Inside of the Podcast Lab, I have distilled everything I've learned from building a Forbes top-rated and Apple Podcast chart-topping show into a streamlined 5-step process that helps you plan, produce, publish, promote, and profit from your own podcast in just 30 days. Inside of the Podcast Lab, you'll follow my exact blueprint through 5 actionable modules. Plus, you'll get exclusive bonuses like email templates, episode checklists, and social media strategies to amplify your show's reach, all designed to make your podcasting journey as simple and profitable as possible. Your audience, your story, and your dream guests are ready, but time is running out. Do not let this chance slip away. Head to teachmetopodcast.com to secure your spot in the Podcast Lab. That's teachmetopodcast.com. I'll see you inside. If you're a creative soul looking for a way to take your photography or event business to the next level without adding more hours to your schedule, you're going to love this inspiring story. Catalina was a wedding photographer working her tail off to make $1,000 for weeks of work. But when she added a photo booth to her business, everything changed. She started charging the same amount for just 3 hours of work. Since then, she scaled her business to 7 figures. Now, if you're thinking, that sounds like the dream, you need to check out this free masterclass from Photo Booth Supply Co. It's called Capture Success: How to Turn Your Creative Passion into a 6-Figure Photo Booth Business. Catalina is going to show you how you can take what you're already passionate about and turn it into a massive profit. You'll learn how you can earn $1,000 or more per event with a photo booth rental business. If you're someone who loves creating memories, or maybe you've been looking for a fun side hustle, you've got to check this out. Head to photoboothsupplyco.com/goaldigger to get your free access and my special promo code. This is your chance to work smarter, create more freedom, and build something truly amazing. That's photoboothsupplyco.com/goaldigger.
There's no moral hierarchy from my perspective in the act of eating. It doesn't mean that you're any better if you have chosen to eat one thing over another. It means that you made a choice about one or the other, and it does not preclude you from moving forward in life and realizing your greatness.
I'm Jenna Kutcher, your host of the Goal Digger Podcast. I escaped the corporate world at the age of 23 with nothing more than a $300 camera from Craigslist and a dream. Now I'm running a 7-figure online business that feels even better than it looks, all from my house in small town Minnesota with my family. Here, we value time as our currency. We mix the woo and the work, and we are in the pursuit of building businesses that give us the freedom to live lives that we love. I've always loved turning big goals into reality, and I'm here to help you do the same. This isn't just a peek behind the curtain. Come along with me and my guests as we tear the whole curtain down. Every week, we tackle practical, no-fluff marketing strategies and host honest discussions on what works and what doesn't. Join me and my expert guests for actionable insights to help you grow your dream business with confidence. Pull up a seat and get ready to be challenged, inspired, and empowered. This is the Goal Digger Podcast. Have you ever considered the profound connection between our food, culture, and our overall health? Until I met my guest today, I had never fully understood how deeply intertwined all of these things are and how they shape our well-beings in ways that we often overlook. My friend Maya Feller is the founder and lead dietitian at Maya Feller Nutrition. Maya's expertise in providing medical nutrition therapy and nutrition coaching is unparalleled, addressing conditions such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, mood disorders, developmental disabilities, and disordered eating. Maya's approach to nutrition is both inclusive and culturally humble, ensuring that our education is anti-bias and patient-centered, helping people make informed and personalized food choices. She has shared her insights with millions through speaking engagements, writing, social platforms, and numerous appearances as a nutritional expert on Good Morning America, Today Show, and Tamron Hall, among many others. She's been featured in the New York Times, Mind, Body, Green, Well and Good, and many other publications. Now, in our conversation today, we explore the intersection between food and culture, emphasizing how our cultural food traditions influence our nutrition and our health. We also dive into the importance of metabolic health for optimal well-being and longevity with practical tips for enhancing our metabolic health through diet and lifestyle changes. Maya also shares her expertise on gentle nutrition, inclusion of beloved comfort foods in a healthy diet, sleep, and so much more. Get ready for an amazing conversation filled with actionable advice to help you make informed and balanced food choices. Maya Feller, welcome to the Goal Digger Podcast. With smaller budgets, shorter timelines, and sky-high expectations, growth is feeling really painful right now. But HubSpot is here to help. They just announced more than 150 major product updates that'll make impossible business growth feel impossibly easy. Like Breeze, HubSpot's suite of new AI tools that'll help you say goodbye to busy work and hello to better work. There's Breeze Copilot, a sidekick to assist with all your tasks and boost productivity. Breeze Agents to automate manual time-consuming work and add expertise. And Breeze Intelligence to give you the richest, most comprehensive picture of your prospects, so you know which are most likely to become loyal customers. They've also reimagined their marketing and content hubs with new ways to create breakthrough content, updated features to generate better leads, and lots more to uplevel your marketing and your revenue forecast. Get ready for growth without the growing pains. Visit HubSpot.com/spotlight to see them all and demo for yourself. That's HubSpot.com/spotlight. So every night before I do interviews, I lay in bed with Drew and I tell him about who I get to speak with. And when I told him that I was going to get to talk to you, he's like, "You are literally glowing right now." I was like, "It could be the skin serum or it could be my friend Maya." Welcome to the Goal Digger Podcast.
Jenna, thank you for having me. Listen, let me tell you, I was in the same sphere and I said to my husband, I was like, "I'm pretty sure that we're related somehow, or that our families know each other. I'm just waiting to find out. I'm waiting to find out."
Yes. So one of the things, and I want to just dive in because you and I, we got to like sit in hot springs and have these conversations, but I wanted to bring it to our listeners. And one of the things that you emphasize and you are so passionate about is metabolic health. And it's not just to live a really long life, but to live a life well, to optimize well-being now and in the future. And I think so many people are obsessed with this idea of biohacking and longevity. I am one of them, but we also want to think about now. So can you let's start here. What is metabolic health? What does it entail? And why is it so critical that we're paying attention to it right now?
Yeah. So when I think about metabolic health and I talk to a patient, I say, I want you to think about your body on the whole. I want you to think about your hormones and your endocrine system. I want you to think about how your blood pressure is being regulated, how your blood sugars are going up and down, what that looks like over the course of a 3-month period or even longer. I want you to think about your lipid levels and all those unsexy tests that we get. That's your metabolic health. And for a long time, we dietitians and clinicians have been having this conversation. Like, we don't ever talk about weight. Some of us do, but we really say, I need to see your lab work, because you can be cute as ever on the outside. But those tests for us, and for me in particular, that's the tell about what's going on with your health now, previously, and in the future. So when I'm saying, how's your blood pressure? That's a regulator, right? If your blood pressure is too low or if it's too high, that's an indicator that your body systems are actually under stress. If your blood sugars and your insulin levels continue to be elevated, it's an indicator to me that all of those signaling hormones are not having the correct conversations and that there needs to be a shift, that there's some type of stress. If you're not sleeping, right, then we know that there's a real impact on insulin, blood sugar, blood pressure. It's not the sexy conversations, right? Because we often hear, just like you said, Jenna, biohacking and hormone health. And people are like, there's something for me to do. But with this metabolic health, we're talking about the body and the connectedness of all those systems.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's so interesting to me because I feel like these types of conversations aren't had enough. And even in looking at like my parents' age, like I end up helping them get blood work drawn because relatively they look healthy and the doctors won't draw their labs. And bioindividuality is so critical. And so it's like, it's almost like I picture you reading like the book about so-and-so based off of their lab work. And if you don't have that, you're just going off of what your eye can see, which isn't the full story.
That's exactly right. I mean, the thing that I often say to people is this conversation about metabolic health actually starts decades before they even step into my office or our first encounter. We've all been eating since we're about 6 months to a year old. So that is when that conversation internally begins. And whatever's happening within that culture of the home around food and the way that kids are being fed, that actually informs the next decade. That also informs the subsequent decade, and it goes on and on. And we usually don't look that far back. But when I sit with people, Jenna, I find that when there are these abnormalities, it goes all the way back, and there is a stress that they can pick out as being extraordinary within whatever their life circumstances.
Okay, I have to tell everyone. So we were so lucky to be on a retreat with Now Foods, who's an amazing partner. And Maya got to lead a session. And one of the coolest things is we didn't have a ton of time, but one of the things that you did that I just loved is you made everyone go around the room and just tell a food story. Why is that something that you are so passionate about? Because people were crying, people were laughing. It was this deeply connecting piece of the retreat that I think nobody saw coming. Where did that come from and why did you invite that in? Because it was so undeniably special.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. And I appreciate you reminding me of that moment. There's a lot of times in our lives where we separate ourselves from the act of eating. And where we say, I'm going to deny myself something that makes me feel good, because in terms of the societal norms around food, anything that makes us feel good has to be quote unquote sinful, right? And that's something that we get from very, very young. So by asking people to think about a food memory that brought them joy, for me, is asking them to drop into a moment where food is pleasure-filling and not fearful. And it also reminds them that the act of nourishment on that very basic level is something that I want to invite them to return to. It also is a way for me to say very subtly, the comfort foods that you grew up with in your childhood can and should be a part of your pattern of eating. Because it's not just nourishment for your cells, but it's also that rest and digest that reminds you of kind of who you are in that basis.
How did you learn how? Because when you do this and when you talk and with the conversations we've had, you are so much more than just the letters after your name and what you do. I think you pull out something so special. And what you were just talking about how deeply integrated the stories we have around food are and how deeply impactful they still are decades and decades and decades later. How did you find that intersection? Because I feel like that's something we don't hear about enough, especially when it comes to health.
I have to say, I've got to credit my family 100%. So when I was growing up, my biological mother was working on her PhD in a time when Afro-Caribbean women, this was not a thing, right? So this is the 70s. I actually went back to the Caribbean from Massachusetts and lived with my grandparents as she was finishing up her PhD. And when I was there, there was a very different way that people gathered with food. It was celebration, but it was always, Jenna, there's always space for more. So if you and Drew showed up, there's always space for more. If you bring the kids, there's always space for more. You could bring your neighbors and there'd always be space for more. And so when I thought about these moments as I went through school, I realized that I had been educated actually to say there's not more space. And in fact, what I'm supposed to do is to remove and restrict. And I realized that that was wrong And it was wrong because the restriction actually shifts us into a fight or flight. It moves us away from being relaxed in the moment because now we're focused on, I should not have, therefore I am not good. So it goes all away from the act of eating and into this psychological shame cycle. And when I finished school and I was working in the community, I learned so much from my patients because I was coming to them with the restriction, you can't have. And I was running a community program with really marginalized groups, Jenna. And here I am restricting. You can't have. This is no good. And they were like, why? Why can't we sit together and have a meal that is good and flavorful without all the no's? And that was really the first time that I opened the door to there's more to this than the taking away and allowing that intersection to live even with a health diagnosis.
I love that. And I think it was even interesting being in a room of like 20 women, how emotional food is for so many of us. And one thing I'm curious about is, especially for people listening. So the people that are listening right now are predominantly women, really driven, incredibly busy, right? They are the goal diggers. They are the dream chasers. They are the ambitious ones. And I know for me personally, I think I held this weird belief of like, I can have success or I can be healthy. Like there was this weird separation that I feel like I'm uncovering now as I continue on my own health journey of like this belief of like, you can have this, but you can't have both.
Right.
Why do you think we do that? Why do we separate health and food from like everything else? It's so interesting as you're saying that. I'm like, I feel like this impacts so much.
It does, Jenna. So I had this amazing conversation with someone, and you're going to see where this is headed. But they said, often in healthcare, we do the healthcare happens from the neck down. And then anything that's going on psychologically, we're like, well, that's not a part of healthcare. That's mental health. That's not healthcare. When in fact, now we're like, actually, it's the entire body. And so what we do is we say, well, in order to be successful, you have to drop into the restrictive portion of food. You cannot enjoy the pleasure aspect because that's not successful. And we all have bought into this. This is way beyond the culture of dieting. This is a societal silent agreement that says you may not be happy at the table because that means that you're engaged in quote unquote gluttony. And I'm not here to say whether or not it's, that whatever it is that you're eating is good or bad, because I don't actually have those conversations around food. What I say is this helpful? Is it harmful? Is it nourishing? And is it something that you want to re-engage with on a regular basis? Or is it something that you want to engage with once in a while? And I have to tell you, Jenna, people don't like that. Because what they want to hear from me is, Maya, no, you cannot sit down and have a croque madame. That is all the bad things. And I'm going to say, well, that's something that perhaps, depending on the person's health and where they are in their stage of life, is a once in a while engagement. You may have a little bit more leeway. And that doesn't say anything about who you are morally as a person. There's no moral hierarchy from my perspective in the act of eating. It doesn't mean that you're any better if you have chosen to eat one thing over another. It means that you made a choice about one or the other, and it does not preclude you from moving forward in life and realizing your greatness.
Wow. If you're serious about making connections that actually lead to results, LinkedIn is where it's at, especially if you're in the B2B world. With LinkedIn ads, you can get your business in front of the right people, like 180 million senior level executives and 10 million C-level execs. It's like the ultimate business network, but way more targeted and with fewer distractions. On other platforms, it can feel like you're shouting into the wind, but with LinkedIn ads, you're building real relationships with the right people, and that's where the magic happens. 79% of B2B marketers agree that LinkedIn is their number one for paid media. And it's easy to see why. LinkedIn gives you tools to drive real results. And with 2 to 5 times higher return on ad spend, it just makes sense. So if you want to build meaningful relationships, start making smarter moves with your marketing, and grow your business, it is time to get LinkedIn ads working for you. Make B2B marketing everything it can be and get $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/goal to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/GOAL. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, let's be real. Why are we still overpaying for wireless? I know I've been guilty of it, but Mint Mobile is here to change the game. For just $15 a month on a 3-month premium plan, you can get unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data on the nation's largest 5G network. That's right, $15. You can even bring your own phone, keep your number, and all of your contacts. The switch is super easy and there's no need to start from scratch. You get to keep everything the same and just pay less, like way less. If you've been searching for a smarter, cheaper way to manage your phone bill, this is the sign you've been waiting for. No hidden fees, no surprises, just a great deal on wireless. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/goaldigger. That's mintmobile.com/goaldigger. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/goaldigger. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions. You know, what hit me too is, as you were saying that, I think so many of us, especially women, are wired to be rule followers.
Yes.
And so dieting gives us rules to follow that brings the morality in, right? I am good if I follow the rules. I am bad. Same with religion, same with all of the systems that we find ourselves in, of if we know the game, we can play it well for most of us. And that's all we aim to do, is to play it well. And I think what's happening, and I think you are really leading the way in this, is this really conscious unpacking of what are those rules? Why were they created? Who are they serving? And are they actually helpful or harmful? What does it look like for you? Let's say you sit down with a woman, and you could even pretend like it's me or someone that would be listening to this, who really has struggled to look at health from a holistic standpoint. And they separate every piece of it out and they say, you know, I can do this, but I can't do that. Or I'm going to focus on this, but this will have to wait. How do you kind of bring that more holistic approach to somebody?
So I'm a huge believer in small steps. And it's funny because we all know that small incremental steps really lead to successful behavior change. Yet somehow folks are like, well, that's not good enough. I need more. I want to do something grand. And we're like, how about start by writing it down? Like, tell me where you are in terms of understanding and knowing your own health. When was the last time you went to the doctor? Do you know what it means when you take a look at your own lab work? Do you know your family history? If you have children in your life and they're older or younger, how's their health? What's the culture inside your home around intentional movement, calm time? What does that look like? Write it down for me. Starting there, that's like, well, that's not sexy enough. Isn't there something big and grandiose and I can do? I'm like, well, guess what? The value is in that because it starts with you, and that's the bio-individuality. And it's also the intersection, because we're realizing that I often talk about social determinants of health, and people usually think about that in the context of people who are struggling financially, but there are social determinants of health for all of us. So as you start to write down your facts, what's happening for you socially, where you are in your life, what you're doing, then you realize, hey, this has a real impact on how I nourish myself, when I nourish myself, what I choose to nourish myself with, and how my body responds and reacts to it.
I love it too, because recently we discovered that both of my girls gluten doesn't do well with them. And so we were really having a lot of conversations about, well, how do we explain this to them so that they don't, build up fear around food or questions? And it was so interesting because we just started to understand that like, you can have this, but notice how you feel after you eat it. And you can make the choice, like the choice is yours. And it's so interesting seeing how they have shifted where even a 2-year-old is like, is this gluten-free? And she asks with just genuine curiosity because she knows she doesn't feel well. And it's funny to me because even in just watching children kind of navigate and start to understand that, I think about how seldom we as adults even pause to ask ourselves, how do I feel after I eat that? Like, do I even take a moment to notice? Because, for so many years in my entrepreneurial journey, I was a person who I would, skip meals and then all of a sudden I'd be starving and I'd pound a bag of chips and I'd get back to work and I'd, drink 8 cups of coffee a day and all these different things. And I never once really paused to say, how do I feel today?
Right.
Like, how is this impacting me? How do we start to bring in, because I think one of the things that I love about you so much is this consciousness and kind of this invitation to like slow down and bring the questions back in. And I think that when we bring those questions in, we find the answers. So how do we start to even just start to notice more?
Yeah. I love that question so much, Jenna. It almost makes me want to say like, hey, everyone, let's take a break and just breathe for a second,
Let's do it.
It's that, right? It is, for me, helping people to understand and know that perfection is not what we're striving for. That what we're striving for is an internal conversation with as little judgment as possible. We all judge, right? We've all got our judges. But how can we have that conversation and say, it's okay for me to pause. It's okay for me to ask myself a question and then reflect on it. And I tell a lot of my patients and people that I work with, Jenna, we're all great at our jobs. And we create these incredible ways that we will jump through hoops for the work that we do. But then we expect our body to be kind of brutalized by working all the time. And we're like, well, why did you give up on me? Why didn't you just go with me through the fire? And your body's like, hey, Maya, hey, Jenna, you didn't pause. You didn't give me sleep. You didn't give me water. You didn't give me air. I got no nourishment. And so I want folks, as they're listening to this, to know that I'm not saying I want everyone to go to an ashram and do a full change. That's a beautiful thing to engage in, right?
Right.
However, I know it's not realistic for all of us. So what are the ways that you can carve out space and intentional time? And if it's 30 seconds and you're like, okay, this is my 30 seconds to take a pause. And I usually say to people, actually start with the easiest part of their day. We like to start with the hardest part. We're like, I'm going to fix that. And I'm like, wait, slow the roll. I'm like, let's go back to the easiest part of your day. And where is there space for you to modify with regard to your nourishment and stress? And those are for me, the two things that I put hand in hand. And so it might be getting out of bed in the morning, starting with a glass of water and a stretch. Sounds like nothing, but for some people, that first glass of water actually sets them off on the, oh, I should hydrate. The stretch sets them off on the, oh, I should move my body. And so it's these very I like subtle.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that you are passionate about, and I feel like I've been hearing so much about this, is gut health. What's going on with gut health? Why is everybody talking about it? Why does this feel like new information, even though it's not? Like, what is the connection? There's the gut brain connection. There's so much. Talk to us about gut health and why we should be paying attention to it.
So people are really into gut health and have been for some time because we say that the gut is like the hub of the body, meaning that it has these bidirectional, so in and out conversations up to the brain, out to blood pressure, organs, blood sugars, like all of our endocrine system, all the hormones. The gut is like that little hub. It's the biggest immune mediator in the body. And so when we're thinking about when that metabolic health goes awry, when we go back in reverse and we think, what's happening in the gut? Synthesis of hormones, nourishment, breakdown of all the foods, the vitamins and minerals, metabolism, digestion. And so when all of these things start to get haywire, we're like, well, was there an interruption where either the conversation was interrupted between the gut and what other parts of the body, or was the gut, the integrity of it somehow damaged because it couldn't actually sensitize or see the nutrients that we're putting in? What have we done? And in many cases, Jenna, depending on where we live in the world, those external stressors, so separate from food, our external environment actually has an impact on the makeup of the bacteria within our gut. And I know you know this so well. I had a fantastic conversation with Dr. Colin Hill from the University of Cork, Ireland, talking about the gut microbiome. And I'd read some really fascinating research about people who live very far in the Amazonian rainforest and how they're finding that the microbes and makeup of their gut is completely different than the microbes and makeup of my gut and your gut. And I'm sure that the microbes and makeup in your gut change as you move through various areas and ups and downs. And when I say ups and downs, I don't mean good or bad. I mean times of more work, times of more relaxation, right? So just shifts in our life. And so people are really into modulating our individual gut health so that we have the best possible health outcomes. Now, here's the thing. And I love this so much. And I said to Colin, Dr. Hill, I was like, I'm going to use this. He's like, you've got the microbiome that you deserve. It's your microbiome. And I was like, oh, that's so heavy.
Whew. Yeah.
Right? I know, right? I was like, I have the microbiome that I deserve. Oh my goodness. Right? Because here's the other part of that conversation is the shame spiral. And I should have done something different. But no, I've got the microbiome that is a reflection of my own life and what I've lived. Sometimes we can modify it, right? And we can change our life circumstances, and sometimes we can't. So like, I know for all those women out there who were working those heavy duty, high powered jobs, lots and lots of hours, it's not realistic for me to be like, sister, sit down. But what I can say is, can you plan out and think when your next 3-day weekend could be? And that'll give you a shift in your gut microbiome. That might allow some of the good bugs to populate in abundance, with some of the less desirable ones to lay dormant and go to bed. Can we talk about shifting your body and having more fiber rich foods? And everyone's like, well, there's got to be more to it. And I'm like, that's what it is. Like 100%. That's what it is. And can you be intentional about moving out some of those things that stress your body? This is what the research says. Added sugars, the added salts, the saturated and synthetic fats, they do a number on your body. There's no way around that, right? So how do we make the shifts so that our plates are reflective of what we actually want to be putting into our body? And that's why the gut is so exciting, because it's truthfully, it's like the moon, Jenna. We know something about it, but we're still learning.
If you're a creative soul looking for a way to take your photography or event business to the next level without adding more hours to your schedule, you're going to love this inspiring story. Catalina was a wedding photographer working her tail off to make $1,000 for weeks of work. But when she added a photo booth to her business, everything changed. She started charging the same amount for just 3 hours of work. Since then, she scaled her business to 7 figures. Now, if you're thinking, that sounds like the dream, you need to check out this free masterclass from Photo Booth Supply Co. It's called Capture Success: How to Turn Your Creative Passion into a 6-Figure Photo Booth Business. Catalina is going to show you how you can take what you're already passionate about and turn it into a massive profit. You'll learn how you can earn $1,000 or more per event with a photo booth rental business. If you're someone who loves creating memories, or maybe you've been looking for a fun side hustle, you've got to check this out. Head to photoboothsupplyco.com/goaldigger to get your free access and my special promo code. This is your chance to work smarter, create more freedom, and build something truly amazing. That's photoboothsupplyco.com/goaldigger. Yeah, it's so fascinating because I feel like even when I look back on like our fertility struggles and miscarriages and all these things, like there's no discussion around so many of these things that were likely factors of my body just not communicating correctly. And it's so interesting as I dig in. I was telling you when we were together, like I was recently diagnosed with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is what so many women have. And I almost had to laugh because it's like, I'm done having children. I'm finally out of that stage of life and I am now getting a diagnosis. But what I recognize is that so many of the changes that I've naturally made along the way over the years have made it so that it doesn't really impact my life any longer. And one of the things that I think is so helpful, and I think with your approach is just this gentle approach, is I'm honestly thankful that the diagnosis came late because I would have been someone who tried to make all the changes at once and been so extreme as the rule follower that I am, that I don't think I would have ended in this place that I find myself in right now. And so for people that are listening right now, because I think so many women, regardless of if you want children or if you're trying for children or any of that, regardless of all that, I think there's this deep desire for women to feel more energized, to feel more vibrant and alive, to wake up and feel rested. So could you give us 3 things that we could just maybe start to consider as either additions or ideas to ponder in our lives that maybe can get us feeling just a little bit more vibrant?
Absolutely. So the first thing that I have to say is bring your comfort foods into your pattern of eating.
Ooh, okay. Let's talk about this.
I want to qualify this. We have celebration foods and we've got everyday foods. I recognize that. So I'm not saying have cake for breakfast.
Yeah.
But what I am saying is if there is a food that is a beloved food for you and you have been restricting it and your health can support it, bring it into your pattern of eating in a mindful and intentional way, and even better when done with community. There is something about the foods we love that are like a huge hug. This morning, my uncle made Trinidadian food for breakfast. And I woke up and the kitchen, the smells, the spices, the flavors, I could look in the pot and just see everything coming. And Jenna, the last person that cooked for me like that was my biological maternal grandmother, who has since passed. I haven't had anyone cook for me in that way in years. I sat down with my cousin, my uncle, my young cousin, and we all just ate. And it is hands down, it's one of the best breakfasts that I've had in so long. And then my cousin and I went for a walk. We were out for an hour. Jenna, we didn't even know the time had passed. And there was this way that the food for sure was well digested. No gas, no bloating, no distension, no discomfort. My cells took up everything that it needed. And then I was nourished and I was like ready to, hit the pavement and go for like a very brisk 1-hour walk. And it's like, that is something that as women, we really shy away from. And in that moment, I allowed myself the space and time to enjoy the meal, to like really savor it. And it's not what I eat usually. Like I've got issues where I've got to be really mindful of added salts. It was saltfish, right? I feel completely fine. I tracked my blood pressure. My blood pressure did not react. And then I moved my body, which is another way of supporting those detox systems. So bring those comfort foods back into your rotation, even better when done with community. So that's number 1. Number 2, I'm going to put it the very tippy, right underneath that. Hydrate with intention. I don't know what it is, but we're walking around just where our body's like, can I have some water, please?
Yes.
You know? And so hydrate with intention. And for so many reasons, the earth is getting warmer and warmer. There's more humidity everywhere we live. And as we move through the cycle of life into different stages, we really need to hydrate well. Because the hydration in our body helps actually our cells move nourishment around, helps us digest. We need water. It's used for so many processes.
We laugh, Maya, all the time because our kids have water bottles everywhere. And I was like, Drew and I look at each other and we're like, when we were kids, did we even drink water? I don't remember drinking water. I remember my mom taking a Mountain Dew bottle and freezing water in it for soccer games. That was the only time in my life that I had a water bottle. And I'm like, how did we grow into be humans? Because these children drink so much water and I don't remember drinking water as a kid. It is so funny. It is so funny.
I'm with you, Jenna. I actually think that when I traveled through the Caribbean with my family, we did coconut water. That I remember because it was so hot. And I actually do remember the reusable plastic bottles getting frozen and then putting water on top. That's a hard no-no now. Everyone's like, microplastics. Yes. And I'm like, I know, we didn't know.
We didn't know. Oh, I love hydrating. Yeah. Okay, right. Number 3.
Okay, number 3 is rest. Sleep is a biological need. The reason that you'll notice, put sleep above prioritizing other nutrients is because for most women, we tend to be under-rested, underslept. We're exhausted. When we're tired, our body actually wants easily digestible carbohydrates. And because we live in the US, it's not like people are saying, oh, I'm reaching for something that's in its whole and minimally processed form. We tend to reach for hand-to-mouth snacks that come with an abundance of additives. Jenna, you know that I am not here to demonize anyone's food choices, but what I am saying is that when we're tired, it's much harder to enjoy the comfort food with intention, stay well hydrated. Those things that can be level setters, or even eating 3 meals per day, if that's what people do, or 2 meals or whatever they do, it becomes so much harder to engage in the act of nourishing yourself in a well-balanced way if you are not well rested. Mm-hmm. And for many women, that sleep is directly linked to that alcohol caffeine cycle. So you're not well rested. You wake up in the morning, you've doused yourself, not with the 1 cup of coffee, but the 4, 5, 6 into the afternoon because you're exhausted. And then by the end of the day, the executive functioning's all finished and you're like, well, I deserve. And then they go into the alcohol. And so I put sleep right there as being really important because it helps to disrupt some of those things that are actually harmful for our body.
That's so good. It's so interesting because when I even look back on my own journey, I will never forget after our second loss, I started working with a fertility doctor. And one of the things she said was, try to delay caffeine intake until 10 a.m. Yeah. And it was something that she's like, the second you wake up, let your body wake up, let your body come to itself before you start giving it anything. And so that's one thing that I've carried forward. And the other thing is I recently hit 2 years alcohol free. And one of the main reasons why I stopped drinking alcohol is because I started tracking my sleep. Now I have a 2.5-year-old, so you can imagine what my sleep was like at that time of life. And I was so tired. And I recognized that even if I had 1 drink, my sleep and my blood sugar were so deeply impacted all night long that no wonder I wasn't feeling well. And so it was really interesting to even say, a lot of people are like, well, just have a drink, just have it. And I do not care what anyone else chooses. But for me, it was so deeply linked to sleep and recovery that I was like, I need to have energy to do what I want to do in this life. And this is actually sucking my energy. It was just a really interesting, for me, bio-individuality has made all the difference in changing my health because you could tell me all the generalized knowledge in the world, but until I actually see the impacts on my own body, it is really hard for me to make changes. And so that was just something that was so interesting to me.
Jenna, I love that you said that. And I think that when we think about just health in general and nutrition, It's the blanket recommendations that have really led us all astray because
Yes.
it's not applicable. It's, we hear things like, well, X amount of the US population has prediabetes, diabetes, insulin resistance, PCOS, on. But then when you say, wait a second, these are my numbers, that's why I say, write it down. Know your story, because your story is your story. And that's the indicator of where you are and where you're going to be.
And that's what's been so interesting. And I think even looking back at the beginning of this conversation, when you started talking about lab work and numbers, for me, it almost gamified the system in a fun way for me of being able to not just look at something like a scale, but to start to see, oh my gosh, like my cholesterol is lower, my like blood sugar is lowering, like in a really fun way of like, I think so often when we look at diet culture and it's like, eliminate all these things. And now you're living in this restrictive world and you're following these rules, but you never really follow through enough to experience the promised end results.
That's right.
Lab work was like this amazing check-in that let me see like what you are doing is working and your body is saying thank you with its levels and the numbers. And it changed everything for me. And I'm just such an advocate. I think that in the medical system, we have to advocate to even get those numbers in the first place. But it really can change the way that you look at your health. And that was such a huge thing for me.
I agree. I also think too, I found as a clinician, right, working with patients, that when I think about what are the things that I have to do to shift any of the numbers that I need to shift, then it also reminds me like, oh, this is actually a challenge. Some of the things that I ask my patients, I want you to engage in X behaviors. And then I remember, okay, so what are the things that Maya has to do to keep her blood pressure level? I don't have high blood pressure, but my blood pressure is super sensitive. Then I'm like, okay, well, now I know my baseline and I know my behaviors. And so everyone, most of my patients know because I talk about it all the time. That's my thing. But making those shifts.
Okay, so one thing I've always wanted to ask you, so you get brought on to TV all the time. And I always giggle when I see your segments because you have this amazing way of they're asking you what they think people want, but you serve them what they really need. I don't know if it's intentional, but the way that you do this is powerful. And so people will bring Maya onto TV and be like, is soda bad for you? And Maya has this amazing way of answering the question and giving people what they want. So tell me about this. I'm assuming it's intentional, but you do it so eloquently and you know that you have this short, time stamp to get in your message. Have you always been this good at it?
Oh my goodness, Jenna, thank you so much. And this is so I actually cut my teeth in the community, I have to say. I got that from working in the community because, Jenna, my patients used to actually go to sleep. They were so tough. Like if I said something that they did not find to be interesting, they would close their eyes. Sometimes they would put their headphones on. I had someone like actually put their hood over their head and slide down into their chair. And I was like, oh, I've got to spice things up, right? Because here I am. I'm like, I'm here to talk to you today about, and they were like, no, thanks, ma'am. They called me Miss Nutrish. They're like, Miss Nutrish, not today.
Oh my gosh.
And so it was there that I realized that there's a way that I think about nutrition and health that might not be in line with the real experience of the majority. Right? I'm a farmer's market girly, and that's cute and that's well and good. And that's a certain subset of the population. Many people are trying to navigate a grocery store. And let me tell you, it's overwhelming. I don't know why we have so many cereal brands. Like, I'm like, seriously, do we need that many? I mean, listen, cereal's fine, but I'm like, it's too much. And so when I go on air, I'm working from what's my stuck point? Where's the area that I just need to hear the truth? And for me, Jenna, I'm not going to sugarcoat it anymore because I see people at a point where they're so ill. I have folks that have multiple diagnoses. And once you get that high blood pressure, and you get insulin resistance, the whole endocrine system is under stress. And I know that people, so when they ask me a question, I'm like, well, this is the truth. And I'm there to tell the truth because folks are struggling. And so I know that when you're struggling, you don't want someone to smile at you and say, well, perhaps. What you want is someone to say, hey, listen, friend.
Yeah.
If you do this to the best of your ability, it's one step better than yesterday. And that's what I'm asking. Can you do that with me? And that's how I go on air.
Ugh, it's so good. I mean, everyone, just turn on your TV. You'll see Maya on it. But it's amazing to watch you do that because you recognize you have a short window of time to make a deep impact. And so it's just so cool to watch you do that because you answer the question, but you get to like the heart of it. And I think that really powerful and persuasive people are the people who come at the community with what they think they want, but serve them what they really need. And I feel like you do that in such a masterful way. It's amazing to watch.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you for saying that. And I feel like often too, when I listen and I watch you, that you've done this incredible job of being vulnerable as a way to helping people open up their own vulnerability. And the truth is that if we had more of that in the health sphere, I actually think that folks would be better off.
Yeah, I think so too. As we conclude, what is one thing you want to leave our listeners with? I feel like you have a million, but what is something you just want people to marinate on?
So I like to usually remind folks that you're good, right? There's a lot of time where we walk around being like, I could be better.
Yeah.
I want to remind you that you've got a great body, that you are good as you are. And that I want folks to really take with as they're going through their day and to give themselves grace as they're trying to make all of these modifications and tweaks to be quote unquote better. But inherently, you are good as you are.
Where can everybody find you and connect with you, learn more about you, work with you? Give me all the places.
Okay. So you can find me across socials, Instagram, the TikTok at Maya Feller RD. And you can hit up my website, mayafellernutrition.com. There's really great offerings. We've got on-demand courses that are an entry point into live classes. And the idea is really to help people develop their own personal nutrition roadmap because, as we say, bioindividuality is what we want to focus on. Your story is different than your aunt and your uncle. So I'm here to do that along with the dietitians on my team. And yeah, I am ready to connect and ready to serve.
And do not forget your book. Hello. Come on.
That's right. That's true. So there are two of them. There's Eating from Our Roots, and that book you can find everywhere that books are sold. So go to your favorite bookseller and get a copy. It's recipes from cultures around the world. I am a deep believer in expanding your palate as a entryway into nourishment and flavor. And then the other book is the Southern Comfort Food Diabetes Cookbook. So it's all the stuff that we know and love with a diabetes friendly twist so that it helps to love your blood sugars back. Both of those are available everywhere that books are sold.
Thank you for coming on the show. This was even better than I had imagined. And I imagined really big things.
Jenna, thank you for the time and the space and just the love and for having me on.
When I met Maya months ago, she quickly became one of my favorite people on planet Earth. She is such an amazing human, and the conversations that I had with her were so rich and so deep. I'm so grateful you got to get a glimpse into them today. Thank you so much for spending your precious and valuable time listening to the Gold Digger podcast. This show would not be here without you, our listeners. I just want you to know how much I appreciate you. And if you haven't yet, take a moment to make sure you're subscribed. So many of the applications have changed, and I want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes. We have so many episodes that you are bound to enjoy coming up very soon. Make sure you're subscribed. And if you have a minute, I would love to hear from you and leave a review. It means so much to hear from you, my listener. Until next time, Gold Diggers, you know I'm going to say it. Keep on digging your biggest goals. Thanks for pulling up a seat for another episode of the Goal Digger Podcast. I hope today's episode fueled you with inspiration, gave you information that you can turn into action, and realigned you with your true north in life and business. If you've enjoyed today's episode, head on over to goaldiggerpodcast.com for today's show notes, discount codes for our sponsors, freebies to fuel your results, and so much more. And if you haven't yet, make sure you're subscribed so that you never miss a future show. We'll see you next time, Goal Diggers.